Chapter 13 of the International Mechanical Code talks about fuel oil piping and storage. Now you have to be careful about this because in Connecticut as well as some other states, the National Fire Protection Agency or Association deals more with the fuel oil piping and storage. So this serves as a basis, but the other codes are actually building upon this and are referenced by this chapter. So chapter 13 is a relatively short chapter. Chapter 13 begins, as all of the chapters in International Code Book do, with the general statement, goes through the scope, and then gives you some basic storage, fuel types, fuel tanks, piping and valves, and adds a section in the 2006 code regarding tanks abandoned or removed. Now, all the way through here, you will notice that it references International Fire Code. So make sure you're looking at the appropriate codes. Section 1302 talks about the materials, talks about the piping materials, talks about the ratings, and talks about that the pipe standards have to meet the standards in table 1302.3. Talks about fuel pumps, talks about flexible connectors and hoses. 1303 talks about joints between fuel lines and the connections. Okay, unions requiring gaskets or packing, sweat fittings must have a melting point of no less than 1,000 degrees, and they shall not be used in oil lines. Cast iron fittings shall not also be used. Joints and connections must be tight for pressure required by the tests. You have to pay special attention to joints between different piping materials because of the dielectric process. In other words, the joints between two different materials can actually cause it to break down. You have to worry about joint preparation and installation, and mechanical joints, threaded joints is all defined in section 1303. 1304 talks about the piping support, but it refers you back to chapter 3, section 5. 1305 talks about fuel system installation, talks about the size of the installation, and this is a section you need to highlight because it is on all the state exams. The minimum size of a supply fuel oil line is 3/8 inch, the inside diameter, or 3/8 inch OD tubing. The minimum size of a return line is 1/4 inch inside diameter or 5/16 inch outside diameter. Copper tubing shall have a 0.035 inch nominal and a 0.032 inch minimum wall thickness. Talks about protections, talks about the supply piping. Supply piping is connected to the top of the fuel oil tank. Fuel oil should be supplied by transfer pump or by other approved means. And again, this section does not apply to the inside or above ground fuel oil tanks. Return piping, again, top of the fuel oil tank. Talks about system pressure, talks about the fill pipe. The fill pipe shall terminate outside a building at a point at least 2 feet from any building opening on or at a lower level. Vent piping, again, vent piping for oil tanks containing heaters shall extend to location where the oil vapors discharged from the vent is readily diffused. In other words, we don't want to build up vapors. Section 1306 talks about the oil gauging. You have to have a way to tell how much oil is left in the oil tank. Section 1307 talks about shutoff valves. Has to be one at the building, appliance, and it also talks about different relief valves. Section 1308 talks about testing fuel oil piping and refers you to NFPA 31, which is the Oil National Fire Protection Association code book. So section 13 is all about oil piping and the transfer of fuel oil and the storage of fuel oil. It is designed to make sure that we don't have any oil spills and we don't allow any oil to become in a flammable material or hazard. So take a look at the rest of chapter 13. Make sure you read it. Make sure you understand what it means, but realize it is not the only code you're going to deal with regarding fuel oil. Once you're set, move on with your discussion boards and your assignment questions.